Okay, so if somebody asked you to identify yourself, how would you do it? Like, imagine that you were driving a little too quickly and you got pulled over by the police, or you're traveling from one country to another and crossing through immigration. How do you prove that you are, in fact, you?
So I'm not sure if you were following me this weekend. Like, this is eerily reminiscent of something that happened this weekend.
Were you traveling or something?
I was driving this weekend and got pulled over by the police and got this ticket, which is in my pocket because I have to go pay this ticket later today.
Did they ask you for ID?
They did ask me for ID. I produced the ID that we have in Hong Kong in addition to my driver's license for them to confirm who I was. And it was, and that's normally how we would do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, based on what we're talking about, we are issued, wherever we live in the world, some form of government ID. And in a lot of situations, multiple forms of government ID,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Identity card, passport, driver's license.
This happened to me too. So this weekend, for a better reason, I was in southern China dealing with some stuff up there in Shenzhen. And same thing, you cross over the border. Now it's actually quite advanced. Anyone that's crossed the border between Shenzhen and Hong Kong, you know, there's biometrics, they take your fingerprints, right? They take a facial scan, they look at your identity documents still. It's actually very regulated. And interestingly enough, if anyone has ever Googled me, you'll see that my hair or facial features often, or my facial hair often changes. So they always sit there and stare like at the passport, trying to identify.
Make sure it's you.
Yeah, make sure it's me. Like who is this person in front of me? But you're right. This is what happens to people on a daily basis in some instances. Yeah.
Like us, you probably already have an official government-issued ID. But you may be surprised to learn that according to the World Bank, over 1.1 billion people around the world lack any officially recognized proof of their existence. In fact, this is so prevalent and critical that United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 16.9 is a goal that hopes to ensure everyone around the world has access to a legal form of identity. That sounds crazy, right? It means that 1 out of 6 or 7 people do not have any form of official ID.
Without any forms of identification, it can be challenging to access institutions and opportunities that many of us take for granted, such as healthcare, social protection, education, and finance, not to mention travel, driving, voting, employment, etc. Think about opening a bank account. Without any official document to prove that you are you, chances are that you'll not be allowed to open an account. And then again, a bank account may be another prerequisite for a lot of other things, such as getting a job, securing a long-term place to live. Overall, people without official ID risk being marginalized and excluded from society.
And in the case of large refugee crises, this can turn into a global political concern. According to the United Nations, it is estimated that 80% of the roughly 65 million refugees in the world do not have any form of official documentation to prove their identity. And while there are, sadly, many examples to consider, let's briefly look at one recent example, the Syrian refugee crisis.
Since the Syrian civil war started in 2011, more than 5 million people have fled their country, often having to leave their belongings behind, including their official identity documents. In fact, there have been reports saying that 70% of the refugees lacked basic identity documents.
To address this issue and provide aid, the World Food Program, operated by the United Nations, piloted a project called Building Blocks in the Syrian refugee camp Zaatari in Jordan, where they began utilizing biometrics and blockchain to facilitate aid and to identify individuals. To be eligible to receive assistance, refugees have to record their biometrics, which is then stored on a UN database, and they are allocated an account on the Ethereum blockchain.
Purchases are then made through scanning their iris in their eyes at local shops, which confirms their identity and facilitates payment. No cash, card, or mobile is needed for the transaction to take place.
So, why should people like you and us, who already have government-issued IDs, you have your driver's license, and maybe a passport, why should you even care about this? And how will this impact you? The reality is that governments in most part of the world are developing more and more of this technology into the concept of managing and controlling identity. And this is an important question for all of us to consider as we think about the impact such technology will have on all of us.
Okay, so what do you think? Do you think that moving forward, these non-government issued IDs will become the new norm? Or do you think this is more of an exceptional situation, that this type of change, this pace of change won't happen so quickly? And do you think that governments may accept outside private NGO-created identification systems, or they're always going to want to control and create their own ID systems?